McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop. Episode 5. The Night Enthusiasts. September 14th, 1921. I know what's happened to you, Mr. Renfield said. Please, I can explain everything. My hands started to shake. Here at last was the answer. I was going to find out what I was. Find out why my eyeballs had almost given me a heart attack when they made me look like a ghoul in my own bathroom mirror. I would know why I was so strange, why I had started to change. I would know what my mission was, what the purpose of this transformation would be. Perhaps I'd pack my bags and sail to Peru, or India, or Egypt, and live out my days as some magical woodland creature that deals in blessings and curses. I leaned forward on the couch. "You'll have to close the door," he whispered. He glanced out into the hall, as if afraid someone was listening. I know better than to let a strange man into my apartment without the door open, but I didn't care anymore. I had to get answers. I got up, and I shut the door. "Quick," I said. "Mrs. Kubler will have my hide if she catches this door shut. Hurry up and tell me." I vaulted back onto the couch. Mr. Renfield cleared his throat. I thought my blood vessels would burst from the suspense. "You're what's known as a magic unusual," Mr. Renfield said. "And the old man at McGillicuddy and Murders made you this way by giving you that china eye." A magic unusual. It has a lovely ring to it, doesn't it? And that dastardly old man! Not even asking me first if I wanted to glow in the dark like a Halloween decoration. "I guess the eye was where it started," I said. "But how? Is it some sort of magic spell?" "Sort of," Mr. Renfield said. "McGillicuddy and Murders is a cryptic place. They're dangerous over there. I'm incredibly grateful I got to you first. If they'd asked you to join their ranks..." He shuddered. "Miss Merkel, please listen. There is something you must know." Suddenly, the lights went out. Mr. Renfield and I looked at each other, our eyes both glowing in the dark. "Quick," he said. "You're not safe." I leapt to my feet. The room was dark, and all I could see was light spilling in from under the door. I heard loud footsteps on the other side. Someone pounded on my apartment door. "Mrs. Kubler?" I said. "Quiet!" Mr. Renfield barked. The voice on the other side of the door was not Mrs. Kubler's. It was a man's voice. He shouted at us, then hammered on the door again. In the darkness, Mr. Renfield snatched my hand and vaulted towards the window. He whisked the window open and clambered out onto the fire escape. "Quickly," he said. I thought in a flash of all the things I wanted to pack, but couldn't. I wondered, in a flash, if this was all some bizarre kidnapping scheme. But Mr. Renfield's eyes were glowing too, which meant he and I were one and the same. And the men on the other side of my apartment door didn't exactly sound friendly. I clambered out the window, still wearing heels, and clanged down the fire escape. When we reached solid ground, Mr. Renfield took my hand and ran with me down the alley. My lungs were full of night air, and my heart pounded. I felt so deliciously alive. How can terror be so wonderful? "Do those men want to kill me?" I said. "Worse," Mr. Renfield said. "They want you to join their ranks." We burst out onto the wet, shimmering street, and Mr. Renfield hailed a taxi. A taxi sloshed up in a spray of reflected city lights, and I clambered in first. Renfield jumped in after me and slammed the taxi door. "The Purgatory Club," he said to the taxi driver. "Daniels and 5th Street. Hurry." The taxi driver stepped on it, and I leaned back. My head swam. What was... I started to say, but Renfield silenced me with a wave of his hand. He looked significantly at the taxi driver. Secrets cannot be discussed in front of taxi drivers. I'm a real adventurer now. I ought to learn these things. So we sat in silence. Rain pattered against the windows, and the taxi wove its way towards Daniels and Fifth. I'd never heard of the Purgatory Club, but I'm not much of a club girl. The taxi came to a stop a few minutes later, and Renfield got out. He paid the taxi driver while I stood there in the rain, feeling bedraggled and lost. My vanity got the better of me, and I hoped we weren't about to set foot in the Purgatory Club, because I looked like a wet sheep. Alas, my vanity was due for a punching, because we walked straight in. I tugged at my skirt and flattened my hair, but no one even looked at me. The club was loud with music and foggy with smoke. The walls were red, and glassware glittered all throughout the room. A girl at the back was earning her living in a very interesting way. Renfield didn't even glance at the club, however. He strode towards a curtained alcove on our left. The curtains were shut, and I was shocked and embarrassed when he tore the curtains apart, because there was a couple necking inside. "Get out," Renfield said to the couple. The girl began to chatter and gripe at him, but the man only blushed and slunk away, taking the girl with him. When they were gone, Renfield beckoned to me, and I stepped inside with him. He shut the curtains. The air smelled a little bit like incense, and, if I'm being honest, like wet dog. It was not a majestic place to spend an evening, but I suppose purgatory wouldn't be. Renfield turned and faced me with grave eyes. "This is how you can reach us," he said, "if we ever get separated again." He stepped up to a painting on the wall, and he spun it upside down. The woman in the painting looked at me with mournful, upside-down eyes, as if begging to be set right again. Behind the painting, a small doorway opened. Renfield gestured to me, and I hurried into the darkness. He followed close behind me and shut the door. Then we were alone in a musty-smelling place. I felt tired, and I wondered when I was going to wake up from this dream that was starting to be rather a bother. I found that I could see fairly well in the dark. Renfield slipped ahead of me and led the way. A few twists and turns later, and lights began to glow on the walls, candles flickering behind green panes of glass. Roots hung down through a red brick ceiling. The air smelled chalky and a little bit like iron. "Where are we going?" I asked. "You'll see," Renfield said. On my left, a skull grinned out of the wall. Where were we? A tomb? My heart began to beat a little faster. I love danger. I love adventure. I love the unexpected and the bizarre. But I don't love evil. I love defeating it, in theory anyway. I don't know if I've ever defeated anything in my life, but I do not intend to prove a villain. I felt like I was walking into a witch's lair, something sinister to read about, or even something exciting to fight against. But to join? I didn't know what this place was. Was I becoming a creature of the night now? Something a little bit wrong and twisted? Did I not have any choice in the matter? Renfield reached a door at the end of the corridor. He opened it, and a strange smell wafted towards me, like oranges and crisp, fresh paper and pine. It smelled like Christmas morning. Renfield stepped into the room beyond, and I knew that when I followed, things would only get stranger. I stepped into a large cave. The sides of the cave were piled in oddities and wonders, much like the items in McGillicuddy and Murders. There were paintings, bird cages, and other strange things scattered across the floor, including a carousel horse, its mouth open in a scream. In the center of the cave, a large black gazebo sat, purple lights shining around its rim. Inside the gazebo, 12 men and women sat, watching us with pale faces and unmoving eyes. "Welcome," Renfield said, "to the Society of Night Enthusiasts." We hope you've enjoyed episode 5, The Night Enthusiasts, of McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop is written and performed by Minerva Sweeney Wren. All rights reserved. Please subscribe, share it with your friends, and support Minerva Sweeney Wren at patreon.com/Sweeney Wren. McGillicuddy and Murder's Pawn Shop will continue next week with episode 6, Stranger Than a Nightmare.